Reborn 2015. My wife lied to me, so I moved on and found peace. Imagine sitting across from the person you love, celebrating an anniversary, when one small moment flips your entire world upside down. What would you do if the one you trusted most was hiding something that could break you? This is a story of love, betrayal, and the strength to move forward when everything falls apart. If you're ready to uncover a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more gripping stories like this. Let's begin. The evening started like any other anniversary dinner, until Clara's phone buzzed with that familiar urgency. She barely touched her steak, just 2 small bites, before dropping the news. "There's an emergency at work. I need to handle it." I watched her face carefully, noting how she avoided my eyes, her fingers nervously playing with her napkin. Usually this would have sparked an argument. But tonight was different. I simply nodded and took another bite of my steak, savoring its rich flavor. This unexpected calmness seemed to throw her off balance. I could see it in the way her eyebrows knitted together in confusion. "I'll bring you something nice when I get back," she offered hesitantly, already gathering her things. I just smiled and continued eating as she rushed out the door. Later that night, while scrolling through Facebook, my world tilted. There was Clara in a photo posted by Jason, her childhood friend, rolling up her sleeves in his kitchen. She wasn't at work at all. My stomach clenched painfully as memories flooded my mind. All those times she'd cooked for me, supported me, stood by my side. I had always counted on her honesty. I didn't call to confront her. I didn't send angry messages. I simply turned off my phone and went to bed. In the dead of night, I heard the familiar beep of our door lock and Clara's quiet footsteps. Through half-closed eyes, I felt her presence beside the bed, watching me, perhaps wondering about my unusual calm. The next morning I made breakfast, simple sandwiches and orange juice. When Clara came to the dining room, she stopped short. "Where's my breakfast?" she asked, confusion evident in her voice. It was true. I had always made Chinese breakfast for her, even though I preferred Western style. Today was different. The tension in the room was thick as she finally spoke. "I know you're angry about yesterday's lie, but you've been so difficult about Jason before," she trailed off, watching me anxiously. I kept my face neutral as I replied, "I'm not angry," and I meant it. "Jason had a stomach problem," she continued, her voice growing smaller. "He lives alone. I couldn't leave him." "I'm not angry, Clara." My voice came out sharper than intended, making her flinch. Seeing her startled expression, I softened my tone. "Really, I understand. We can talk about this later. I need to get to work." I left before she could respond, ignoring the hurt in her eyes. At work, a familiar scene played out in my boss's office. She leaned forward across her desk, enthusiasm written across her face. "Michael, this overseas position is perfect for you. The location is safe. The benefits are excellent. It's a golden opportunity." She'd made this pitch before, laying out impressive salary packages and career trajectories. But I'd always hesitated, my thoughts tangled up in my relationship with Clara. Today felt different. Looking at my boss's hopeful expression, I made my decision. "I'll take it." Her face lit up, and surprisingly, my chest felt lighter. The evening brought unexpected developments. Clara was already home when I returned, a rare occurrence these days. "You're late," she said quietly, holding out a wrapped box. "Anniversary gift." Guilt washed over me as I accepted it. "I forgot yours. Can I make it up to you?" I watched her face fall, adding another crack to our fragile evening. She launched into a familiar speech about Jason. "We grew up together, Michael. He's alone in this city. I promised his parents I'd look after him." Frustration crept into her voice as she continued. "If I wanted to be with him, why would I choose you? We're like siblings. Why can't you understand that? I maintained my newfound composure. I understand completely. Please, say what you need to say. This seemed to anger her more. Our conversation ended with her storming out after learning I'd already eaten dinner. Order takeout or cook something, I called after her, followed by the sharp slam of the door. Hours later, she returned. Rain had soaked through her clothes, her hair dripping onto the floor. "It's raining," she stated, her voice trembling slightly. When I simply suggested she dry off, her disbelief was palpable. "I've been walking in the rain for 5 hours, Michael. No umbrella. You didn't even call to check on me." Her voice cracked. "You used to care. You used to care so much," she continued, water dripping from her clothes onto our floor. "After every argument, you'd call everyone we knew trying to find me. You'd leave the lights on and wait up. Tonight, 5 hours in the rain, and not a single call." Her voice trembled with a mix of accusation and hurt. I kept my voice deliberately steady. "You're an adult, Clara. You can take care of yourself. And I remember how much you hated me checking up on your friends." I watched as realization dawned on her face, probably remembering her own harsh words from the past. Those times when I'd spent hours frantically searching for her, only to be met with anger instead of appreciation when I finally found her. "Are you done?" she asked icily. "I'm an adult. I know what I'm doing. You don't need to pressure me like this." The irony of her using the same words that had once hurt me wasn't lost on either of us, but I was too tired to point it out. The upcoming overseas assignment was already weighing on my mind. "Just go take a shower before you catch cold," I said, retreating to our bedroom. That night, drifting between sleep and wakefulness, I felt gentle fingers trace my face, followed by a soft sigh as the mattress dipped beside me. Clara's presence felt heavy with unspoken words. The next few days fell into a strange pattern. Clara became a ghost in our home, leaving early, returning late, maintaining complete radio silence. Surprisingly, I found peace in this quiet war. Then, after 5 days, an unexpected message lit up my phone. "I'll cook dinner tonight. Come home to eat." The message stopped me in my tracks. Throughout our relationship, cooking had always been my domain. I'd even complained about it sometimes, half-jokingly asking her to take a turn in the kitchen. She'd always wrap her arms around me, claiming her cooking skills were so poor they might land me in the hospital. "Besides," she'd say sweetly, "I love eating your cooking too much." Love had painted a beautiful picture back then, blinding me to the contradictions. I'd spent countless evenings after work, following recipes, collecting burns and cuts like badges of honor, all to perfect dishes that would match her taste. It wasn't until Jason casually mentioned Clara's culinary skills that the illusion shattered. All those years of believing my girlfriend couldn't cook, only to learn she'd been serving meals at her friend's place all along. The memory of our last big fight echoed in my mind. Clara had been frustratingly calm about the whole cooking revelation. "Jason is picky with food and can't cook," she'd explained, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "He's not like you. You can eat anything. I'm just looking after my brother." Then came the jab that still stung. "You're an adult. Stop expecting others to cook for you." "If cooking for me is such a burden, then don't," I'd snapped back. "I don't need your meals." Of course, she'd apologized later, half-heartedly, and I'd forgiven her. Like always. What's that old saying? Tears in love are just water in the brain. Still, I responded to her dinner invitation. "All right," I texted back. "We're heading toward a breakup anyway. Might as well keep things civil." When I walked through the door that evening, Clara's voice drifted from the kitchen. "Michael, wash up and have a seat. Food's almost ready." I sat at our dining table, lost in thought. If she'd cooked for me any other time before this, I would have been ecstatic. Now it just felt like too little, too late. She served 4 dishes and a soup, all light fare but undeniably well prepared. I had to admit, she was skilled in the kitchen, which made all her previous excuses even more painful. "Michael," she said softly, a hint of hurt in her voice, "why haven't you reached out these past few days? During our previous fights, you always made the first move to reconcile, but it's been 5 days of silence." "I thought you needed space," I replied simply. The silence stretched between us like a physical thing. "About that day," she ventured carefully, "I had to cook for Jason because of his stomach problems. He missed dinner. I'll teach him to cook soon, so I won't need to keep going over there." Okay, I mumbled, focusing on my food. I kept my response vague, afraid she'd explode again with accusations about me not understanding her. "Hey," she said suddenly, "why don't you come to this month's gathering?" I looked up, surprised to see hope shining in her eyes. We both knew what gathering she meant, not the regular friend meetups I'd attended before, but their exclusive monthly get-together. The one reserved for their inner circle only, no spouses allowed. I'd asked to join before, but she'd shut me down immediately. When I'd persisted, she'd snapped, "Michael, are you trying to annoy me on purpose?" The memory of our previous fight about these gatherings still stung. "Stop being so clingy," she'd screamed. "You're suffocating me. This is our private friend time. Why can't you respect my personal space?" I'd lost it then, flipping the table as I shouted about Jason's constant presence at these private gatherings. Her response had been ice cold. "Jason grew up with us. He belongs there. He doesn't have other friends here. I'm just keeping him from being lonely. Stop acting like a crazy person." Now here she was, inviting me to the very same gathering she'd once forbidden me from attending. But with my overseas transfer looming, work had become all-consuming. Besides, the thought of spending an awkward evening with her friends, who'd always kept me at arm's length, held no appeal. "Work's been really busy," I said gently. "Maybe another time." The sound of chopsticks hitting the table cut through the air. Clara's face crumpled with exhaustion. "Michael, I know you're upset about Jason. I've been trying to accommodate you these past few days, but I'm tired too." Her voice trembled with frustration. "I've humbled myself enough. What more do you want? You're 28. Stop acting like a child throwing tantrums." "You misunderstand," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Work really is just busy right now." "Fine. Whatever." The words came out stiff, brittle. We finished dinner in complete silence. Later that night, while stuck at work fixing a project crisis, my phone buzzed. It was a WeChat message from Jason, a photo of him and Clara sharing a Pocky stick, both grinning at the camera. "Haha, these guys are crazy. They're making Michael and Clara play punishment games. Hope Michael won't mind." I felt oddly detached as I typed back, "No problem. I don't mind." Then I muted my phone and dove back into work. Hours later, I found my phone flooded with missed calls and frantic messages from Clara. "It was just a game punishment. I broke it off quickly. Our lips didn't even touch. We were so far apart. Please respond, Michael." "We're heading to that new stir-fry place now." A colleague's voice cut through my thoughts. "Ready for dinner?" Just as I was heading out of the office building, I spotted Clara waiting outside. My steps faltered. She was usually at these gatherings until midnight. What was she doing here? Her face brightened when she saw me, quickening her pace in my direction. "You finished early?" I asked, glancing at my watch. The setting sun painted long shadows across the parking lot. "What about Jason?" "Dropped him home," she replied simply. "I'm having dinner with my colleagues." The words trailed off awkwardly. I couldn't bring myself to invite her along. "It's fine. I'll wait in the car," she said quickly. I sighed, knowing I couldn't eat while she sat waiting. I made my excuses to my colleagues and turned back to her. In the fading light, I could see her eyes were rimmed with red. "You're not angry?" she asked softly. She meant about the Pocky game from Jason's post. "It was just a game. I'm not that petty," I replied. The sadness in her eyes triggered a memory. Another party, Another photo. Her drinking games with Jason, posted online for everyone to see. I'd called her repeatedly that night until she blocked me. When she finally came home, instead of apologizing, she'd torn into me, called me paranoid, suggested therapy for my dirty mind. "Michael, let's get dinner," she said, quickly changing subjects. When I mentioned grabbing snail noodles and stinky tofu, adding that I'd take a cab home to avoid stinking up her car, she surprised me. "You can eat in my car. I don't mind." I stared at her, stunned. This from the woman who once had a meltdown over breadcrumbs on her seat? But before I could respond, she took an unexpected turn toward the food street. Parking at the entrance, she turned to me. "Wait here a moment," she said, then disappeared into the crowd. Sitting alone in her pristine car, I remembered the bread incident. How she'd lectured me for an hour about respecting her space, about cleanliness, about boundaries. The memory felt distant now, like watching a movie of someone else's life. That breadcrumb incident had been one of our worst fights. She'd pulled over and lectured me while I was already running late for work. I finally stood up for myself that day, leaving her car to catch a cab. Later, she'd softened, explaining her obsessive need for cleanliness and her special connection to the car. I'd swallowed my doubts, telling myself it was just her personality quirk. But then came that day with Jason. There he was, munching away on chips and spicy snacks in her precious car, crumbs falling everywhere. The sight had frozen something inside me. "Interesting," I'd said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your car cleanliness standards seem quite selective. Or is it just that outsiders like me aren't allowed to eat here?" Jason had immediately put away his snacks, face flushing with embarrassment. Clara's response had been explosive. She'd abandoned me there, and when we finally got home, the real storm broke loose. "Jason has stomach issues. He needs his snacks. Why are you being so petty?" Then came the words that still echoed in my head. "Fine. You want the truth? Jason has privileges in my car. You don't. You're just an outsider. Get it?" We'd nearly broken up then. How did we patch things up? The memory was fuzzy. Probably another instance of me not being ready to let go and her knowing exactly how to keep me holding on. The pungent aroma of snail noodles and stinky tofu pulled me back to the present. Clara stood there, takeout bags in hand, their strong smell already filling the car. "Eat while it's hot," she urged, forcing a smile. "We can get something else after, or I can cook at home." "This is plenty," I said, leaning back in my seat, waiting for her to drive. "Something wrong? Not hungry?" Concern colored her voice. I smiled faintly. "Just thinking about how uncomfortable it'll be for you to drive with me eating here. I can wait till home." "It's fine," she insisted. "Let's park here. It'll get cold otherwise." Hunger won out, and I started eating. When I finished and looked for a trash can, she'd already started the engine. "Leave it," she said. "We'll throw it out at home." The drive home was quiet, broken only by her occasional false starts at conversation. I just reminded her to watch the road. Back at the apartment complex, I reached for the trash bag, but Clara snatched it first. What happened next left me speechless. She deliberately shook the bag, letting broth spill onto her pristine car seat, the same seat she obsessively cleaned every day. "What are you doing?" I stared at her in disbelief. Her eyes locked onto mine with an unsettling intensity. "From now on, you can eat anything you want in my car. I don't care if you make a mess. This privilege is only yours now. Not even Jason will have it." I stood there, struggling to process this bizarre behavior. After a long moment, all I could manage was, "It's late. You should rest." Later in bed, she curled into my arms. "Michael, we need to talk properly." I was searching for a way to deflect when her phone lit up with Jason's name. Her hesitation was visible as she stared at the screen. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Go ahead. Answer it. Might be urgent." The conversation that followed was painfully familiar. Jason, this late? Your stomach again? Call an ambulance? I can't. Is it that bad? Okay, I'm coming. She turned to me, face painted with guilt. Jason might be in trouble. I have to go. Then, as if anticipating my doubts, his condition might be serious this time. I'm worried. You know how he is. What she didn't realize was that her words had just confirmed all the previous lies. Every emergency, every sudden departure. I was too exhausted to care anymore, forcing a yawn and a smile. It's fine. Go ahead. I'll be back as soon as I can, she promised, her expression unreadable. My eyelids were already heavy with fatigue. I couldn't even maintain my fake smile anymore. When the door clicked shut behind her, I sank into a dreamless sleep. Morning came. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. She hadn't returned. I felt an odd sense of calm about it, as if I'd known all along. With the day off work, I decided to use these last few days before leaving the country to go shopping. Clara's call came while I was out. Michael, about last night, I'm so sorry. It's fine. How's Jason? When I got there, his pain had eased, but she trailed off. I understand. No, listen. Her voice rose sharply. It was late, and I was worried about him relapsing, so I stayed. But I slept in the living room. Nothing inappropriate happened, I swear. I believe you. Michael, please. I know you're disappointed in me. That morning's conversation with Clara about Jason lingered in my mind. Her voice had carried an unusual mix of urgency and optimism. As she explained, Jason and I had a talk. He's finally understood boundaries and wants to make amends. He suggested treating us to a meal as an apology, promising it would be the last time he'd interfere. What do you think? I agreed, partly because I believed a proper face-to-face ending was necessary. Life had a way of being ironically cruel. The meeting happened to fall on the same day as my departure abroad. Still, the lunch timing meant I could make my evening flight if we kept things brief. The days leading up to my departure were surreal. My goodbye rounds at work led to playful questions from colleagues about how I managed a 3-year overseas posting without girlfriend drama. Actually, I'm ending things with her, I said simply. Their surprised expressions spoke volumes, but they respectfully kept their questions to themselves. Clara seemed rejuvenated during those final days, as if solving the Jason situation would magically fix everything between us. When she drove us to the restaurant, I was genuinely surprised by her choice, a Sichuan place. It was touching in a bittersweet way. She'd always lectured me about how unhealthy spicy food was, yet here we were. Perhaps she knew me better than I thought. The scene that unfolded inside the restaurant was painfully familiar. Jason's enthusiastic bear hug greeting Clara, her awkward push toward me, his practiced grin as he defended their closeness. Clara and I have always been like this since childhood, Michael. You've seen it before. Clara's attempt at damage control was equally predictable. Jason, we're adults now. Such behavior isn't appropriate anymore. Jason's dismissive shrug spoke volumes. Fine. I see you're taking your boyfriend's side again. What was different this time was my reaction, or rather, lack thereof. Where once their interactions would have sparked jealousy and arguments, I now felt nothing but emptiness. Jason noticed my indifference, and I caught that knowing smirk in his eyes. His apology came next, carefully crafted and utterly insincere. I'm sorry, Michael. I've been careless. Though I know you're generous enough not to mind, I truly regret my actions. I'll step back completely now. Clara, ever the mediator, couldn't help but soften the blow. It's not that extreme, Jason. You can still reach out if it's important. Michael isn't petty. I had no interest in engaging with their performance. Instead, I buried myself in the menu, ordering my favorite dishes, boiled fish and spicy chicken, before passing it along to them. Sometimes, the best response is no response at all. These are both spicy dishes, Jason pointed out, his tone carrying a hint of accusation. Clara's got a sensitive stomach, just like me. She can't handle spicy food. I met his gaze steadily. She doesn't like it. I do. My directness caught him off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless. I couldn't help but notice how perfectly matched they were, both with their delicate digestive systems. Clara's face flushed as she jumped to defend herself. That's not true. I don't have a sensitive stomach and I don't hate spicy food. I just don't eat it often. Her protest sounded weak even to my ears. Jason, quick to seize any opportunity to play the caring friend, ordered mild dishes, stir-fried cabbage and roast duck. Clara, you're too good to Michael, he said, his voice dripping with false concern. I envy him. But hey, I'm still the one who knows how to take care of you best. I always think of your needs when ordering food. He glanced at me apologetically. No offense, Michael. I'm just looking out for her. I took a calm sip of tea, refusing to engage. It's fine. I'm not overthinking anything. The tension at the table was palpable. Clara's face darkened, but she forced herself to keep the peace. Let's just wait for the food, she suggested. Trying to change the subject, Jason, however, wasn't done playing his role. He insisted on ordering one more dish, a chicken cutlet, after making a show of asking if Clara wanted anything else. When our waiter announced my drink was sold out, Clara suddenly sprang up, offering to buy it from a nearby supermarket. In her haste, she left her phone behind, a detail that would soon prove significant. As soon as she was gone, Jason's friendly facade slipped slightly. Michael, he began, with a condescending smile, I couldn't say this in front of Clara, but you're being selfish. A good boyfriend considers his girlfriend's preferences. Even I know that, and I'm younger than you. I worry about leaving her with someone so thoughtless. I sat there, choosing not to tell him how for years I'd been the one compromising my preferences for Clara's comfort. But fate had other plans. Clara had returned for her forgotten phone, catching Jason's words. The color drained from her face as she stood behind him. Jason noticed my gaze shift and started to turn. What are you looking at? Michael? Clara's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. Jason jumped up, shooting me an accusatory glare as if I'd orchestrated this moment. Jason, you're overstepping, Clara continued, her voice carrying a chill I'd rarely heard before. Clara, I was just... Jason stammered. I only wanted to tell Michael to take better care of you. Her response was swift and decisive. I don't need you to tell him that. I can pamper my boyfriend myself. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the same conversation we'd had countless times over the years, but now Clara was having it with Jason. The man who'd always been her priority was clearly stunned by this unexpected pushback. His world, where he came first in Clara's life, was starting to crack. Jason stood frozen, staring at Clara as if seeing her for the first time. All right, he finally managed, his confidence crumbling. I get it. I won't disturb you anymore. With that, he practically fled the restaurant, leaving an awkward silence in his wake. Shouldn't you go after him? I asked, nodding toward the door. The old Clara would have chased him without hesitation. No need, she replied, with surprising firmness. He's a grown man, and it's broad daylight. Nothing will happen. She settled back into her seat, seemingly forgetting about my drink she'd promised to buy. Let's eat. We had barely started when her phone began its persistent dance, ringing, being silenced, ringing again. Each time, Clara would glance at the screen and decline the call, only for it to start again moments later. The other diners began throwing irritated looks our way, the constant interruption clearly testing their patience. Maybe you should answer it, I suggested, watching her growing discomfort. Could be important. It's fine, she said, though her fingers fidgeted with her chopsticks. He never calls when it's actually important, but when the phone rang for what felt like the 20th time, even Clara's resolve began to crack. The other customers, I gestured to the increasingly annoyed faces around us. She finally answered, and Jason's voice carried clearly enough that I could catch fragments. Clara, I'm sorry, Ran out of money. Can't get home. Taxi drivers won't wait. I watched the internal struggle play out across Clara's face, the hesitation, the concern, the guilt. Finally, she stood up, her decision made before she even spoke. Michael, I promise this is the last time. I won't get involved again. She leaned in to kiss me goodbye, but I turned away, pretending not to notice her hurt expression. Go, I said simply. It'll be worse if something actually happens to him. Wait for me, she pleaded, already backing toward the door. I'll be quick. I promise. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone with a table full of barely touched food. At the next table, a group of young people, probably college students or recent graduates, kept throwing sympathetic glances my way. Finally, one of them gathered the courage to speak up. Hey man, he said, his voice full of well-meaning concern. You really shouldn't trust a girlfriend like that. His friends nodded enthusiastically, united in their judgment of Clara's behavior. I couldn't help but laugh, not at them, but at the situation's painful irony. Thanks for caring, I said sincerely. Don't worry, I know exactly what I need to do. When the waiter came by to clear the table, he hesitated. Would you like to take the food home, sir? The question seemed to carry more sympathy than a simple offer of takeaway should. I headed straight to what I'd been calling home, Clara's place, to collect my packed luggage. I told her I was just organizing seasonal clothes and decluttering, a half-truth that worked perfectly since she'd been too busy juggling work and Jason's demands to notice the gradual disappearance of my belongings. The apartment felt different now, emptier, not just from the missing items, but from the absence of what we once had. I placed my keys and her unopened anniversary gift on the coffee table. I'd been curious about what was inside, but opening it now seemed pointless, like reading the last chapter of a book you've already decided to abandon. Goodbye, Clara, I whispered to the hollow rooms, closing the door one final time. My ride to the airport was already waiting downstairs. A wave of emotions washed over me. Regret, not for leaving, but for not having the courage to end things face to face. At the airport, I sent the breakup message and systematically blocked both Clara and Jason's contacts. The moment I finished, an unexpected lightness filled my chest. Years of suppressed frustration finally had their release, and the future suddenly seemed bright with possibility. The hour-long wait for boarding felt like an eternity until I heard running footsteps behind me. There was Clara, disheveled and breathless, a stark contrast to her usually immaculate appearance. She clutched my hand desperately, her words tumbling out between gasps. I went back quickly, I swear. But you were gone. The waiter said you'd already left. She paused, fighting for composure. When I got home, everything was gone. Your friends told me about Sweden. Her eyes brimmed with hurt and confusion. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, I said quietly. Several times. But you always had something urgent. Urgent, the realization hit her. Jason. Panic flooded her face. I'll block him right now. Cut all ties. Never speak to him again. I promise. You can't do that, I interrupted gently. No, I can. Her voice cracked with desperation. He has other people, parents, friends. He doesn't need me for everything. I could only offer a sad smile in response. So he does have friends here, I said softly. The simple observation left Clara speechless, the truth of her actions finally sinking in. Your birthday is next week, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. I was going to make everything right, apologize properly. I didn't know you'd leave so suddenly. Since we're breaking up, there's no need for birthday celebrations, I replied, then added quietly, though I haven't really celebrated my birthday these past few years anyway. The words hung heavy between us. Remember how I used to ask you to spend it with me? But let's not dwell on that. In Sweden, I'll finally celebrate a proper birthday, make up for lost time. Clara's eyes welled with tears, her composure cracking. I'll change everything. I'll cook for you. I'll wait for you to come back, however long it takes. Please, her voice cracked. Just give me one more chance. Don't end it like this. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal as she pleaded. I let out a weary sigh. All right. Hope flickered across her face, but I wasn't finished. Just answer one question for me. Anything, she breathed. Looking into her eyes, I asked gently, tell me just one holiday or anniversary we've spent together since Jason moved here. Just one, and I'll stay. The hope in her eyes died slowly, replaced by crushing realization. Her fingers loosened their grip on my hand as understanding dawned. You won't forgive me, will you? Let's part as friends, Clara. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the small box, the anniversary gift I'd left behind. Please, she whispered, take it. If nothing else, just this. I pushed her hand away gently. Don't cling to the past, Clara. Look forward. And when you meet someone new, I paused, choosing my words carefully. Don't make the same mistakes. There won't be anyone else, she said, shaking her head desperately. The final boarding call echoed around us. I gave her a simple nod. Goodbye, Clara. As I walked toward the gate, I heard her finally break down behind me. Each step carried me further from our shared past and closer to my future. I didn't look back. Some chapters need to end for new ones to begin.